Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ambition's April edition of Office Hours. My name is Taylor. I'm going to be your host today. And for today's topic, we're going to cover data troubleshooting, also known as data validation. Basically, the data in Ambition doesn't match what's in your Salesforce report, your HubSpot report, etc. We're going to give you 9 tips on how you can figure out why that data doesn't align and then what you can do to rectify that. So let's go ahead and get started. So really quickly, our agenda for today, we're going to give a really quick welcome to our training webinar series, also known as Office Hours. Then we're going to dig into Data Validation 101. Then we'll briefly touch on some of our product releases since our March Office Hours, and then open the floor up for a Q&A. So let's get started. Like I said earlier, my name is Taylor. I am a member of Ambition's support team. And then also on the call, we have Ryan Wells, who is our manager of support and operations. So I'll be giving the presentation today, but Ryan's going to be there to answer your questions throughout the presentation. If you have any questions after our office hours sessions today, whether about what we covered in office hours or anything else Ambition related, feel free to reach out to us at gethelp@ambition.com. Also, feel free to reach out to us even if you're a frontline employee, a manager, admin, doesn't matter. We can help out everyone. So now let's move on. We'll give a quick little plug for our office hours series. So every month on the first Tuesday of the month, we will cover different popular Ambition topics so that we can make you become an Ambition expert. Each month is going to be something different. Sometimes it can be about goals, competitions, cadences, programs, accolades, analytics reporting, TVs, etc. These are open to everyone, whether you are a current customer or just thinking of maybe adopting Ambition sometime in the future for your team. We welcome you to come. So the tips we're going to share are also useful for everyone. So if you are a frontline seller, you're a manager, you're an integration owner, all are welcome. All of this information we are going to share will be helpful for you. If you are already registered for a webinar, which you already are if you're attending this one, you're automatically enrolled in all future webinars that we hold. If you think that one of your colleagues would like to join, we'd love to have them. They can just sign up using that blue link in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Next month on May 6th at 3 p.m. Central, we're going to have a competitions masterclass. We'd love to see you there. And again, if you have any colleagues who you'd like to have come to the webinar, they can just use that blue link right there to sign up. So now let's start talking about data validation in Ambition. So there are 3 places where you can do some data troubleshooting. The first is on a user profile page. This is your employee's individual profile page. You can do it on the metrics tab, and this can be the metrics tab on the employees page or on a group dashboard. And then lastly, you can also go to your integrations page. Now, quick disclaimer, usually only people who have the administrator permissions can access integrations, but sometimes organizations will let managers access the integrations tab, so it's just a matter of permissions. But for the sake of being comprehensive and just keeping everybody in the know, we wanted to include it in this webinar. Let's move on to our first topic, which is troubleshooting on user profile pages. So there are 3 questions that you want to ask yourself. The first one is, does this employee have an integration ID? So as an example, if you use Salesforce, the integration ID is that 18-digit string of letters and numbers. If we don't have an employee's integration ID, we cannot give them credit for the data. Think of it as sort of like their mailing address. You can send a letter to John Smith, but unless you give his specific street address, the post office can't deliver it for you. He's never going to get it. It's the same thing in Ambition. If we don't know their integration ID or their integration username, we can't give them credit for the data. The next question is, when was this person added to Ambition and were they ever deactivated? So Ambition will only show you data from the date when somebody joins Ambition onwards. So let's say you hired them January 1, but they don't join Ambition until April 1. Ambition can only show data from April 1 onwards. even if they did a ton of activities in January, February, and March. And then another thing to note is that if somebody's deactivated, even for a day, Ambition will not show that data for when they were deactivated because they weren't an active user, and Ambition only wants to show you data for people who are active in the platform. And then the third question is, what is the employee's group join date? So whenever they join Ambition, we will show data on their personal dashboard. But depending on the date when they join a group, we can only show data from that date onwards. That sounds a little confusing. I'll show you an example in just a few minutes. So right now, let's hop into the platform, and we're going to take on the role of Carson Suarez, who manages a group of account executives. So several of his employees came to him and said, Carson, listen, our closed won deal numbers and closed won ACV numbers for Ambition are not correct. Can you please look into it? So the first person Carson's going to look into is William. So Carson said, hey, William, I am not getting credit. Or pardon me, William said to Carson, hey, Carson, I am not getting credit for my closed won deals for March. Can you please tell me why that is? So Carson's going to click on Edit Profile, and this will give him a look into William's profile configuration. So we can see right off the bat there's this big red banner saying that William is missing integration IDs for a few of the integrations. Carson can scroll down to the very bottom of the page, and he'll see that William does not have an ID for the TB Sales API integration. So because William doesn't have one, Ambition cannot give him any credit for any data that the TB Sales API is sending to Ambition. Now, fortunately, though, this has an easy fix. Carson can just go to one of his admins and say, hey, William doesn't have an integration ID. Can you please add one for him? And they can go ahead and add that. You can also reach out to Ambition support. We can add integration IDs depending on the integration. There's a little bit of nuance there, but feel free to reach out to us. And if we don't have that ability, we can always loop in one of your admins, one of your product owners to get that added for you. So this has an easy fix. And then once we get William's ID added, we can go ahead and reprocess the data, and then he will retroactively get credit for those closed won deals and closed won ACV that he had for March. So the next person who comes to Carson is Amanda, and Amanda says, hey Carson, I had deals, they're not showing up in Ambition. What's going on? So Carson clicks on Edit Profile, and he doesn't see the red banner on Amanda's profile page. So that means that Amanda does have integration IDs for all of the integrations. So the data we're talking about comes from TB Sales API. Amanda does have an integration ID. What Carson's going to do is go over to his source of truth report that he generated in the TB Sales API integration. And he can see that, okay, Amanda does have these 7 deals, and Amanda has a user ID, and it's Amanda Romero. But wait a second, this user ID doesn't quite look like what was in Ambition. So we can see down here that Ambition has Amanda's ID listed as Amanda_Romero with 2 O's at the end. But in the integration, Amanda's ID is just Amanda_Romero with 1 O. So this just means that whenever an admin was adding those integration IDs, they made a little typo. And as with William, this is an easy fix. Carson just needs to go to one of his admins or Ambition support and say, hey, this ID is not correct. Can you please update it for me? And then once we get that ID updated, we can reprocess the data and Amanda can retroactively get credit for her deals for March. Alrighty, so we've resolved the data issues for William and Amanda. Easy fixes there. A third employee named Jesse comes to Carson and says, hey Carson, I have some data for March, but it's not the number I'm expecting to see. So Jesse is looking at his metrics tab on his personal profile page. And this says that he has 4 closed won deals at Dream accounts for March. And Jesse says, that's not right. I know that I have 7. So Carson goes to his source of truth report and he sees, okay, Jesse does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deals for March. So the first thing Carson can do is click on records and see which records Jesse is getting credit for. So we can see that he had 3 on March 31st and this 1 on March 28th, But Jesse also had deals from the 3rd, the 10th, and the 12th. So why is he not getting credit for those? What Carson can do is, again, click on Edit Profile. And then he can check on Jesse's user activation date. This is the date when he joined Ambition, when he became an active Ambition user. And we can see that Jesse's Ambition activation date is March 18th. And these 3 deals he's not getting credit for are from before March 18th, on the 3rd, the 10th, and the 12th. Oh, pardon me. So what we can do to rectify the situation here is that we can change Jesse's Ambition activation date. Now, this is something that one of Carson's admins will have to do, or Ambition support. But they can go ahead and set this to be March 1st so that Jesse can get credit for all of the deals in March. Or if you want it to be sometime even farther in the past, your admin or Ambition support can do that too. And then we would just reprocess the data and Jesse would get credit for those deals. So that resolves things on the individual level. But Carson is also thinking to himself, you know what? A lot of people have come to me with data issues for March. I wonder if there's anyone else who hasn't quite noticed yet their numbers are off. So he goes to his group level metrics tab and he looks at the closed won numbers for last month for March. And he sees that his team has put together 10 deals and he knows that's not right. His source of truth report says that his team altogether had 26 closed won deals at Dream accounts. Now, we already said, okay, Amanda's integration ID was wrong, so she wasn't getting credit. And William didn't have an integration ID, so he wasn't getting credit either. So that explains some of the data issue. And then we also know that Jesse wasn't getting credit for those 3 deals because he didn't join Ambition on March 8th. But there's still some deals that are missing. Why is that? So what Carson is going to do is he's going to click on Records on this metric card. Okay, so there are the deals from Brooke, from Yolanda. All of the deals that are successfully counted have this green circle with the check in them. But these ones for Jesse have the yellow triangle. When we hover over that yellow triangle, it says not a member of group when counted. So here's what this means. It means that in the past, Jesse was an active Ambition user. Jesse, as an individual, is going to get credit for those deals. But he was not a part of Carson's manager group at the time, so this isn't going to be rolled up into Carson's group level total. And here's how Carson can go ahead and check that. So let's go back to Jesse's profile page. Carson can click on Groups. And down here we'll see the team manager group is Team Carson Suarez. So Carson is Jesse's manager. And under the Member Since field, we can see the date is April 1, 2025. And if we recall here, Carson is looking at data for March 1st through March 31st. And since Jesse was not a member of the Team Carson Suarez group for March, that data is not going to appear on Carson's managerial group dashboard. So again, what we could do here is that one of your admins or the Ambition support team can go ahead and change Jesse's member since date to sometime in the past, so that data will roll up to Carson's managerial dashboard. Just one quick thing to note though, a group join date cannot be prior to their Ambition activation date. So let's say Carson wanted to make Jesse's Team Carson Suarez group join date January 1. Well, we would then also have to update Jesse's Ambition activation date to at least be January 1, 2025, if not sometime in the future. Alrighty, so that is all of the troubleshooting that we can do, or just some of the main troubleshooting tips that we can do on the user page. Now let's go ahead and look at Metrics tab troubleshooting tips. So again, we have 3 questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. The first one is, what time frame selectors is your employee using? Now, disclaimer, this one doesn't cause issues too often, but it does pop up once in a while and it's a little bit tricky, so I just wanted to keep you all in the loop about it. 2, is the record in Ambition? I would say 99.9% of the time, there's no disruption to the data flow to Ambition, but sometimes your integration team is making changes to the integration, which temporarily pauses the data flow, or maybe there's some other fringe issue. It's rare, but it does happen where sometimes Ambition doesn't receive a certain record. And then three, do the record details match what's in your source of truth report? So let's go back to Carson's group dashboard and talk about our first question. Are you both using the same time frame selectors? So in Ambition, on the Metrics tab, there's this little drop-down menu where you can pick the time frame of data that you want to see. We have several preset options like today, yesterday, this month, last quarter, this year, etc. And you also have a custom option where you can pick the specific dates that you want to see. My advice to you is that you always use the custom option and not use the preset options if you're looking at data for one person or a small group of people. Here's why. The preset options like yesterday, this week, last month, etc., those use the UTC time zone. So for example, I live in the Eastern time zone and UTC is 5 hours in the future. So if I'm doing some work late in the day, well, what that means is that depending how late in the day I'm doing it, I might be getting credit for it tomorrow based on the UTC time zone. So if I am, you know, what is it called? Burning the midnight oil, and I'm, doing some work at 11 p.m. Eastern, well, that's going to be 4 a.m. UTC. And so whatever data I'm generating at 11 p.m. Eastern is going to be allocated to tomorrow because it's based on the UTC time zone. Whenever you use custom, however, custom is going to show you the data based on your time zone. So let's pretend that Carson is also in the Eastern time zone. If he sets the dates to be March 1 to March 31st, that will show him all of the data that Jesse, Amanda, William generated based on Eastern time. It will not show it based on UTC. Whereas if Carson chose last month, which is still going to show March 1st to March 31st, that's going to show him data based on the UTC time zone. And depending on how late people are working, what the difference in time zones are between UTC and whatever the employee's time zones are, data could be allocated to different days. Again, this doesn't happen too often, but I would just say, again, whenever you are troubleshooting data problems for one person or a small group of people, use the custom time frame. These preset ones, those are better if you're looking at data over a broad range of time for a big group of people who work across multiple time zones. It gives you more of a bird's eye view of activity levels and data. So the TLDR, I strongly recommend that you always use the custom time frame when you're doing some data validation and encourage that your employees do that as well. Okay, so now let's move on to our next question that we want to ask ourselves on the metrics tab, which is, does Ambition have the data, or does Ambition have the record? Was that record ever sent to Ambition? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is yes, we do have that data, but things happen and sometimes the data flow is interrupted. So what Carson can do is he can go ahead and click on records, and this will show him all of the records that he has. So we can see that Brooke has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deals for March. But Brooke comes to Carson and says, Carson, I had a deal with the Pittsburgh Candies and Nuts Company, and it's not showing up for March. So what Carson can do is he can click on details, and he'll look for the customer name for Pittsburgh Candies and Nuts. Let's see, it's not showing up in these details. Let's pretend that he checks these other ones. Okay, it's not showing up in any of those. And then he goes to his source of truth report for Brooke, and he also doesn't see a list for the Pittsburgh Candies and Nuts Company. So what Carson would want to do then is pull in his integration owner. So this could be a member of his Salesforce team, whoever owns the HubSpot integration, whatever it would be, and say, hey, Ambition doesn't have this deal for Brooke from the Pittsburgh Candies and Nuts Company, and it's not showing up in my integration report. But Brooke knows that she did it. Can you please investigate and see what happened to that record and why we didn't receive it? Usually it's for some very obscure reason, but it's something that your integration team should be able to resolve for you pretty quickly. So now let's go back to Carson's dashboard and let's look at some data for, let's say, April 1st to present, to the 8th. Okay, so Carson is looking at these deals and he clicks on records again. And he sees there are deals for Yolanda, Jesse, and Brooke. Excellent. But Jesse comes to him and he says, hey, Carson, that deal for the first, the annual contract value on it is wrong. Ambition says it's 125,000, but it should actually be 150,000. The customer agreed to increase the contract value last minute. Well, so Carson can see in here the deal is the ACV is 125,000. And when we go to Jesse's April data, that deal is worth 125,000. So again, Carson's going to want to go and ask his integration team saying, hey, in Ambition, the deal is 125 and my source of truth report, it's 125. But Jesse says it should be higher. Can you please see why the record wasn't updated? Alternatively, let's say your report shows Jesse is having 150,000, but Ambition says it's 125. You're still going to want to ask your integration owner, hey, was there some issue with sending the updated record to Ambition? They're showing the old total, but doesn't show the updated total. So you'll just want to ask them for help. Usually these unupdated record issues are due to related fields for the Salesforce integration. Not usually, but often. Which gets a little complicated. We won't dig into it, but again, this is pretty rare. But if the number on the records in Ambition doesn't match the record in your source of truth report, you'll just want to ask one of your admins to be like, hey, can you investigate it? Why didn't Ambition get this updated record? Alrighty, so that concludes the 3 questions that we want to ask ourselves on the metrics tab. And then lastly, we're going to look at integration troubleshooting. Now, like I said, usually it's only administrators who can access the integrations tab, but some orgs will let managers access it. So this is still helpful information to know. So the 3 questions you're going to want to ask yourself are, 1, is data still flowing into Ambition? This really doesn't happen often, but it's worth checking. 2, does the metric field match your source of truth report? Sometimes the fields that you use to build your report are different than the fields that were used to build the metric. And that's usually just a difference of how RevOps thinks that something should be measured versus how you, the individual manager, are measuring it. This is a pretty common reason why data doesn't match in Ambition. And it's easy to resolve as well. And then our last question we want to ask ourselves is, does the metric logic match your report's filters? This really only applies if you have a super complicated metric, which is considering a bunch of different fields and criteria on if you need to give somebody credit. But again, it's helpful to know it does pop up not infrequently. So wanted to just keep you all in the loop about that. So we'll go back to Carson's dashboard. And what Carson's going to do is go to Administration, Integrations, and he's going to click on Edit besides the TB Sales API. Now this flow is going to be the exact same no matter what integration you're using. Just you can pretend this is Salesforce, this is Outreach, this is HubSpot, whatever it would be. It's same process. Okay, so we're going to click on Edit. So the first question Carson is going to ask is Ambition still getting data? Okay, so Carson's going to click on Edit here. And then he's going to click on Data Explorer. And this is going to show him all of the uploads that the integration has sent to Ambition. So we can see today is the 8th, and the integration has sent 2 uploads to Ambition. And scrolling through the history, we can see it usually only sends us a handful of uploads each day. So the data flow seems to be working as normal here. Some integrations, depending on how they're set up, they send data every minute, every hour, once a day. I would recommend you just scroll through the upload history really quickly to get an idea of what the standard cadence is. If it's every minute and there's a several hour gap, then you're going to want to loop in your integration owner and ask them, hey, are you doing any integration changes which would disrupt the flow of data? If you send data every hour, and again, there's a multi-hour gap, you're going to want to loop in your integration owner for some assistance. But in this case, we only send data a few times a day. We got them today. Everything seems to be working as expected here. So the next thing Carson can do is go to the metric library. So under metric library, he can click on manage. And we're going to look at the closed won deals dream accounts metric. So he's going to click on edit there. Now let's take a look again at our friend Jesse. So Jesse is on his personal metrics tab. He's looking at data from March 1st to March 8th. He's using the custom time frame selector, very good. And he sees that he's only getting credit for 4 closed won deals at dream accounts, but he has 6. Carson checks his source of truth report and he says, okay, Jesse does have 6 closed won deals. So why isn't he getting credit for them? So the first things that Carson is going to look at on this metric configuration is section number 2, computation. So we can see here they're giving credit to the sales API employee ID, giving credit on the contract sign date. So the employee ID for all of these records is Jesse Novak, and the contract sign date is in April for all of them. So we can rule out a mismatched date field or a different who gets credit field is the issue here. But just a quick note, it is common for maybe your report gives credit based on the assigned to ID, and the metric gives credit based on the created by ID, or some other mix-up. That's a pretty common reason why there are data discrepancies. The same thing for the when did they get credit field. It can be assigned to date, due by date, completed date, etc. So you just want to make sure that those who get credit fields and when do they get credit fields match what's in your report. And if they don't, then you'll want to either, 1, ask your admin to change the metric configuration so it matches your report, or 2, update your report configuration so it aligns with how the metric is being built in Ambition. So based on the computation configuration, Jesse should be getting credit for these. But let's scroll down now to filters. Now, not all metrics will have filters, but I would say probably 50% of them do, so you always want to check here. And filters are optional, just another way to narrow down your data. So we can see here that employees will only get credit if the deal length in years is greater than or equal to 2. Now let's go ahead and look at those. We can see over here, deal length in years is one of the fields on our report, which is all very good, but 2 of them have a deal length of 1 year. And we're only going to give credit based on the deal length if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So in this case, no, Jesse is not going to get credit in Ambition for these 2 deals because they're only 1 year long. So what you can do here is either adjust the settings in your report to track deals that have a deal length of 2 years or more, or you can go to one of your admins, a member of your sales ops or rev ops teams, and be like, listen, we have this metric called closed won deals, dream accounts, but it's only counting deals that have a contract length of 2 or more years. Can we have 2 separate metrics, one that tracks deals regardless of deal length and then one that tracks multi-year? Or can we adjust this one to track all deal lengths regardless of if they're multi-year or not? But basically, you'll want to talk to your admins, your RevOps team, and be like, hey, I think we should change how this is being measured and tracked in Ambition. And then one other thing I wanted to call out here is if you notice that some things aren't aligning, I would recommend that you check out the description field. Now, a lot of people don't use the description field. I think they should. It just clarifies to other people how this metric is being tracked and who it's relevant to. So in this case, it says deals with dream accounts, ACV over 100K, contract for 2 or more years. So this already lets managers know, okay, that this was a deal with a dream account, but it was only 50K ACV. Well, they're not going to get credit. Oh, this was only a 1 year deal, but it was over 100K. Well, they can't get credit because it wasn't multi-year. Um, People don't use the description field as often as they should, but it's always worth checking out. And if you're an administrator or a manager who has integration tab access, I would strongly recommend that you fill this out. Another common mix up is that we see maybe you're tracking closed deals for your team in North America, but that's being counted slightly different than how it's being counted in EMEA or APAC. So you always want to fill out the description just so everybody else is on the same page and they know who is this metric for and then what are all of the parameters we're using to calculate this metric. Just makes things easier for everyone. So highly, highly recommend you fill out the description tab if it's not already filled out for you. And there's one more thing I wanted to call out about the filter section. Now, this is a simple metric. It only has this one filter, but sometimes metrics will have multiple filters. So we can go ahead and add the second one, add a third, add a fourth, etc. So your admins can go ahead and play around with the filter logic a little bit. This could be 1 or 2 and 3 and 4, or 1 and 2, or 3 and 4. You could play around with the logic with ands, ors, and parentheses. So again, you're going to want to make sure that the filter logic, your ands, your ors, your parentheses match what is in your source of truth report. It doesn't apply in this case because there's only one filter, but that's something else to be aware of. Filter logic being different than what's in your report causes a decent bit of data misunderstandings and ambition. Now, one more thing. Like I said, most managers don't have access to the integrations tab. That's usually an admin's only thing. So what are you supposed to do if you're a manager and you can't check the metric configuration? So that's easy peasy. Just reach out to the Ambition support team. Again, you can contact us at gethelp@ambition.com. Just send us a little screenshot of your source of truth report saying, hey, this is how things are being calculated in my report. Can you let me know how it's actually being calculated in Ambition? And then we would be happy to tell you, okay, hey Carson, we're giving credit based on the sales employee ID, we're giving credit based on the contract sign date, but I saw your report is giving credit based on the contract start date, so that could be causing some issues. Also, the deal length must be 2 or more years, but I saw there were a couple of deals in your report that were only 1 year long, things like that. So we were happy to help out and explain how that data is being calculated in Ambition. Okay, everybody, so now we are at the end of our webinar. Thank you all for joining. I know it's a ton of information today. But before we wrap up, really quickly, I just wanted to talk about our latest product releases and updates since our March office hours session. So the first, and it's honestly one I'm super, super excited about, is we now have a snapshot agenda item. So previously, in coaching, you could have a metric snapshot, and that would capture the data for one metric and one time frame. And if you wanted to talk about multiple metrics, you had to create a different agenda item for each one. But now with the snapshot agenda item, you can capture up to 8 metrics for one time frame, all in just one question. So it makes things a lot cleaner, makes things a lot quicker to build if building out a check-in or a program. And then for the employees, it's just also easier to parse and read all this information. So that's really cool. Highly recommend you go and play around with that in your Ambition instance. It is really cool and it's going to save you a ton of time. It is chef's kiss. I really like it. And then our next feature is that you can now approve check-ins, excuse check-ins, etc. in bulk. Previously, you had to mark check-ins as excused, completed one by one, and if you managed a big team, or let's say you were covering for another manager while they were out of office, it could just take some time. It was a little tedious. But now you can go ahead and mark those as completed, excused, etc. in bulk. You can do up to 500 at one time, which is also really, really cool and going to be a time saver for folks. If you ever want to keep an update on our releases, feel free to click this link here and you can check out our release updates in real time so you don't have to wait for office hours just to see what the newest happenings are. Alrighty, so it doesn't look like we got any questions for now, but just wanted to remind you all, if you have questions later about this webinar or anything else ambition related, literally anything ambition related, please don't hesitate to send us an email. You can reach out to us at gethelp@ambition.com. We're available Mondays through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and we will be happy to help out with any questions that you have. And if you have a really gnarly issue that you're looking to resolve, we can also hop on a quick video call with you to get everything sorted out. Well, thank you for joining, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we will see you in May for our competitions masterclass. Bye-bye.